Hey, what's up, guys? Little man with a big opinion here. If you are not subscribed to the channel and you watch these videos, take a moment and hit that subscribe button. It'll really help me out. If you enjoy this content, like the video. If you don't, dislike it. Ask your questions, do all of that stuff, uh, and let's go ahead and hop into it. I made a video yesterday talking about, the winter storm watch that's going to happen. And I read a news article talking about all of the things that at least my state has done to better prepare. Uh, in 2021, the last ice storm killed almost 250 people and left thousands and thousands of people without power. The state has added more battery storage, more wind and solar. They've had to do more winterizing of like natural gas plants and replacing power lines, and specifically the poles. There's not that I've found charts and things that show everything that was replaced. And they have explained, the ice accumulation, there's still probably going to be local power outages, but they have more teams on standby than they did in 2021. And so that's going on the state level. From a local level, I feel a lot better because, like, someone at my work was saying, their husband tried to go out and buy another generator. They've got one that works, they've got one that he's working on, and he wanted another one. And he went to 7 or 8 different stores and couldn't find any. He's a slightly older guy, so he did talking, and a bunch of people were buying generators, and that's why they didn't have any. He estimated that there was a few hundred in his local area that were purchased. So congratulations, all of those people are preppers. I got my generator 3.5 years ago at this point, and take care of it. And if we need to use it, we've got it. If we don't, then the gas that I put in gas cans can go in the wife's car because she doesn't keep enough gas in there anyway. And me and my 2-year-old went out to the farm, and we probably got about a third of a cord of wood. Some of the wood that we got was stuff that I had cut down and chopped up and left out there. It's my bug out location. We go camping and do stuff out there. I'd rather not spend my entire time gathering and hunting down wood. But I wanted more wood at the house, so I had that, that piggy bank of stuff there. And, we also just went through, and trees that had been knocked down, I cut up and brought them home with me. I probably got 8 or 9 trees that range between 3 to 6 inches. Cut them down, 5 to 8 foot pieces, and put them in the back of the truck. That way, I can just use the Sawzall or something and cut them to length here. Put them in the garage so they don't get wet. I don't have to go too far outside. So kind of cleaning up the farm a little bit. But just doubling, making sure that we have plenty of firewood. And, I probably staged 2.5 days worth in the garage. I've got to walk 8 feet to go get it. And like I said before, it makes me feel really good that I can take care of myself, my wife, my baby, my grandmother, and my handicapped cousin. Uh, that's one of those things that it doesn't take a lot of time to collect firewood throughout the year. I mean, I've picked it up on the side of the road. People cut up trees and stuff, and they stack it for the garbage people to throw out, and I'll go and pick it up. Uh, we've made sure that our battery banks are charged, that we've got the flashlights and lanterns and the hand warmers and just all of the stuff to keep us much more comfortable instead of in a survival state. As well as, we made chili last night. We probably made 4 or 5 pounds of chili. And we can simply put it in a pot, put it on the shelf above the fireplace and heat it up if we have to. My grandma picked up a couple of cases of water. That's simple for her to do. That's also something that's disappearing off the shelves. I went through and, just dumped and refilled most of my Nalgene's because I think I put the water in those in July or August. Just giving it to the pets. And, tossing it in the plants and stuff like that. But, I've got 30 or 40 Nalgene's. So preparations have been made. And right now I'm just kind of hoping that they cancel school on Monday. They're going to take away a half day if they do that, so we don't have to use a bad weather day. 2 3-day weekends in a row would be nice. And, I'd like to not lose power or internet because I've been playing the heck out of Fallout. I think that's kind of what helped, make me into a prepper. This winter storm thing is a really big reason. Seeing all of, this protesting and, like, even in my local area, there was a group of people, they were anti-ICE. You can disagree on what they're doing. Mostly elderly people. Random guy, tried taking their signs away, started beating up people and knocking them over. Another man intervened and stopped it. Regardless of, whether you agree with what they were doing or not. I've said it before, I'm a 120-pound guy. From what I saw in the video, this guy looked like he was in his, 40s or 50s, and probably easily had 100 pounds on me. I would like to think that I would have helped out the anti-ICE protesters, even though I might not completely agree with their messaging. But that's why I carry a firearm. Like I said, I'm a tiny dude. So it's coming to, small town East Texas as well. We don't see and hear as much about this in our area because most of our, county and, state officials are, cooperating with, the investigations and, the work that's being done. But, that is something to think about. I was talking to someone the other day because they're mostly upset about, the American citizens that are being detained or arrested or deported. Uh, and, talking to my brother, I didn't know this, but about 170 Americans have been deported. Most of them being kids that are being deported with their parents. Um, not getting too political, but I kind of think that's the right thing to do. If your kid's like under the age of 15, you should probably go with mom or dad. Um, but, he made the argument that there's been about 400,000 deportations, and so that number comes out to about, it was 0.0425% of the deportations. So you're saying 99.96 of them are above board? I think the media is trying to do some dividing here. There was a poll saying like 48% of Americans are fine with ICE deporting people. There's been other polling that says like 58% say that they're being too aggressive, and it's one of those things that it is, someone is doing the job that most of us don't want to do. We'll see how this goes. The last big thing that I saw that I thought was, slightly more important was, they say we're getting closer to some sort of peace treaty between Russia and Ukraine. There's like one sticking point left. They didn't tell us what the one sticking point was, but that was coming from the Ukrainian guy. And so, it's one of those things of, most of us, like, the general consensus is you want it to stop. I think you need to dig past we're going to criticize the current administration because we don't like it, and they haven't stopped this fighting. The last one didn't stop it either. I don't really care who's in office and who's in charge, as long as it stops. I think that's what most of us would like to happen. It kind of ties into the stuff going on with Greenland. The U.S. is, I think, trying to create a stronger sphere of influence. And, I feel like in my lifetime, we're going to have to deal with Russia militarily. In my lifetime, I feel like we're going to have a spat with China militarily. It's one of those things that it's going to happen. But let me know your thoughts. Are we doing the right thing in Greenland, in Ukraine? How do we handle a massive illegal immigration population? And are you getting ready for this winter storm? I feel like there's just a little bit of rambling going on here. I think I'm more worried about the storm than looking at the other stuff in the news. And trying to get my protein in, because we're down about 3.5 pounds since the start of this year. So at least from that point, prepping wise, we're hitting our goals. I'll catch you on the next one.